After a long day, Robert cleaned. He turned with perspiration on his forehead onto Willow Creek's peaceful streets, their tiny suburban community next to him in. His 9-year-old in the passenger seat. Emma, the daughter, rested her head against the window as humming a gentle melody. Warm light from a golden sunset illuminated the sky, pink and orange hues creating a serene radiance across the tidy homes and neat grass. Robert refocused the rear view mirror, a tiny grin pulling at his mouth, while he became aware of Emma's contemplation following a long day at the garage repairing worn-out engines and outbreaks. All he desired at this point was a silent evening with his family at home. We're at a red light waiting when it occurred, a flash of motion, a haze of filthy fur, and an abrupt fear. The German shepherd jumped out into the open. Robert's truck's rear window, heart thumping in, brakes slapped. Emma let out a startled scream from his chest, turned to see what had touched down. In the rear seat behind them, a frightened skeletal dog cowered. His fur was matted, his ribs painfully apparent and dirty, and his big, troubled eyes met his. Onto Emma and Robert, he didn't attempt to escape. He had selected them. But why? Robert and Emma just gazed for a time. The dog saw the skeleton and was stunned. If a dog was coiled in the most, ball trembling so violently that it was unimaginable. His matted seat rocked beneath him. His ribs and fur were streaked with mud, protruded abruptly from under his skin. His pressed his ears against his head, and his broad brown eyes flitted from. Emma and Robert were seized with pure horror. Emma's voice was the first to be heard. Gentle, broken murmur. Robert choked. "Dad, he's so scared," tightly holding onto the steering wheel until his instincts caused his knuckles to turn white. Yelled for him to exercise caution. Stray dogs can be unpredictable and deadly. But observing their frantic eyes, he was just aware of sharp pain. Sorrow. He gently and slowly moved the "Park your truck here," he said to Emma, cautiously and softly opening his door. Robert went outside and went around to the rear seat. As he went up to the dog, flinched and pushed himself violently, more forcefully at the door, as though attempting to. Robert whispered, "Hey, easy boy," disappearing. He was stooping low and moving slowly, calming and non-threatening. "We won't injure you." Emma had escaped her, was kneeling on her and wearing a seatbelt, looking over the headrest of the seat with wide, teary eye. "Can we keep him, Dad?" she asked in a quivering voice. "We can't leave him in this state." Robert paused. They were unable to simply bring home a random dog. He might be ill, he might be a member of someone while yet observing the damaged. Robert was deeply aware of the monster before him. This puppy was alone, so let's just Robert answered. "First, get him somewhere safe." Silently, he slowly held out his palm, allowing the dog to make the shepherd's decision. Didn't growl or lunge, he just gazed, still trembling so violently that it was immobile, uncomfortable to observe. After a few of lengthy seconds, Robert placed his fingers lightly on the seat's edge, being cautious not to overrun the dog's territory and say, "Come on, buddy." Gently, he continued, "Let's get you home." And amazingly, the dog didn't run away. He continued to wipe Emma's eyes and said, "I believe he chews us, Dad. Requires our assistance." Robert climbed back looking into the back from the driver's seat. The name appeared in the view mirror shadow. Suddenly, his thoughts hadn't changed, remained pressed up against the distant door. His terrified eyes never stopped twitching furiously, leaving them. Emma turned her tiny hands to Robert, firmly gripped in her lap. "Dad, we can't leave him," she replied steadily, even if her eyes were wet. "He needs someone." Robert rubbed his face in an attempt to consider this carefully. "We don't know where he originated from. He might be ill. He might have somewhere. An owner is searching for him." Emma urged, "Look at him," pointing. "Does he appear to be heading for the rear seat?" Robert, "Someone has been looking after him." Didn't respond. Right away he couldn't. The state of the dog's health spoke louder than any words. No collar and no protruding tag bones, slicing through soiled fur each and every inch of. Slowly, he screamed terror and abandonment. "All right," Robert replied as he breathed. "Lastly, we'll bring him home we'll work things out tonight. Tomorrow, Emma said with a gleam of relief. Robert softly withdrew her face, moving slowly on the road so as not to shake the shuddering canine in the rear. Emma spun around in her car as they drove, Sid conversing quietly with the dog and providing kind words of consolation. "You're fine," she said. "Now, we're going to take care of you." Robert cast a sidelong glance at, observing the shattered animal in the mirror. His rear seat, he experienced pain in his chest that he hadn't anticipated, regarding the dog's quiet, hurting from his frightened, yanking eyes, in a manner that Robert couldn't elucidate how they arrived at their driveway. After several minutes, "Let's go slow," Robert whispered as he entered park. With caution, he unlocked his door and walked, speaking softly and soothingly in the back tones. "Let's get you, buddy, come on. Somewhere cozy." Shadow remained motionless. Robert's whole body was frozen in terror. Paused, then looked at Emma, nodded in encouragement, extending his hand into the... Robert attempted to slide his arms beneath his back. Shadow the dog let out a cry, but didn't resist. Robert carefully raised the shaky, frail body into his embrace. Emma opened the front door hastily too. Megan gazed at the home, holding it wide, rising from the kitchen while Emma and Robert entered the room carrying a bunch of shivering fleece held in Robert's embrace. She gasped as she sat down her. "My goodness." Coffee mug Robert shifted. "What happened?" His weight in an attempt to prevent the... He told a long story about a scared puppy. "We were unable to depart once we jumped inside the truck." Ever the pragmatic nurse, Megan jumped straight into professional mode. She moved slowly closer, kneeling to obtain a better view without being frightened. "The dog even more. He's really skinny," she whispered. Without growling, Shadow said softly, "Poor thing." Or snap, he simply shivered because he was too tired and too scared to respond. Megan looked up. "We must clean him," at Robert and Emma. "Robert, get up and look for any wounds." "Are you sure?" Megan said hesitantly. Tiny, comforting grin, soft hands, and, when combined, warm water can do wonders. Megan meticulously planned a modest bath in the sink in the laundry room. Emma got some warm water and filled it. Robert stayed with towels and an old blanket close by, whispering to Shadow the... Megan moves her hands slowly the entire time. "Stable and seasoned." "Easy boy," she said, muttered as she dropped Shadow carefully into the heated water. Initially, Shadow whimpered his legs and flinched fiercely. "Stiff. It's all right, my love," Megan said. Emma crouched close by and comforted. "You're safe," with a towel in hand, whispering encouragements. The warm water gradually, as Megan's tender touch did its magic. Shadow's shaking stopped. Quite so difficult, but still shallow breathing carefully balanced Megan out a bit, washed off the dirt layers, exposing scars concealed beneath the fur's matted surface. Some were elderly and ill-recovered, while others were... "Someone hurt him," Megan remarked as a fresher. Her voice broke slightly, but not loudly. Anger blazing, Robert clenched his hands across his face for a moment before pushing. They worked slowly, washing it down, and Megan cleaned a couple minor cuts, using an antiseptic while conversing calmly to Shadow. Following what felt as if forever, they encircled him in a cozy towel. Robert carefully raised him one again and carried him to lie in the living room, him cautiously onto Emma's blanket. Shadow's body was spread out and motionless. However, his eyes were curling in on themselves. Emma sat open, far away, and exhausted, cross-legged, a little distant, just being present, yet not merely reaching out. With a calm demeanor, Megan sat on the watching TV on the couch and feeling constricted. The woman said, "It's going to take time." Robert nodded and added softly, "We're not in." Hurriedly, a lengthy period of silence. Then Shadow made the slightest change, his front paws squeezing a little bit nearer to Emma. Emma grinned as her breathing somewhat slowed. Via her, weeping, "He knows he's safe now, Dad." Sunlight was slightly filtered the following morning. Shadow, through the drapes in the living room, remained tightly curled up on the blanket. His breathing was steady despite his strained physique. At the kitchen table, Robert sipped his coffee quietly as Megan. Emma was still in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Pajamas knelt a few distance away from Shadow. She didn't attempt to hum a gentle melody. She simply remained beside him and petted him, allowing. He adjusts to Megan's presence. Looked from the stove, and he's still. Too afraid to move, she watched. God, I don't blame him. Robert nodded, is aware of his experiences after. Brunch, they decided it was time to give it a shot. And assist him in standing, perhaps even take him. Megan went outside to get some fresh air. A gentle leash was taken out of the drawer once they utilized for the dog of their neighbor when they. Canine sat. Let's check if he's. She answered quietly, willing, and Robert knelt down. Next to Shadow, speaking in a soothing, quiet voice. Tones, hey friend, would you like to extend your legs a bit? Megan said slowly, covered Shadow's head with the leash. He felt a little strain at that moment. Every muscle in his weak body froze. Emma held her breath while Robert locked her up. Didn't pull. Instead, he just waited. A long minute went by while Shadow was given time. Next came another, and then, very slowly, nearly, a subtle shadow moved his paws, stretched his legs a little, shuddering as he forced himself to stand. Robert's heart grew. That's it, he said. Friend, he said, you're doing fantastic. Shadow stood shakily, but Megan opened the main door with determination. Robert, let the fresh morning air in, urged Shadow to approach it, shakily step by step. Shadow's step wasn't elegant. He staggered. He frequently pauses, lowering his head and tail, snugly nestled between his legs. However, Emma skipped a few feet ahead of her. She gently clapped her hands in. Motivation, come on. Shadow, you're capable. It and Shadow took a hesitant, uncertain, and fearful step. An additional step by the time they arrived at the little area of grass in front of them. Robert in the yard could barely believe it. Shadow tentatively smelled the air, twitching of the nose for the first time. A tiny glimmer of interest appeared in. Megan wiped her eyes against his. Subtly, her emotionally charged voice. She muttered, he's trying after. He's still trying at everything. That afternoon following Robert's completion of his. He took a seat at the garage during his shift. At the kitchen table with Emma and Megan, Robert had his laptop open in front of them, searched every lost place over the last hour. He could locate local shelters for dogs, community boards, and neighborhood associations. Nothing, he answered with a hint of frustration. Into his voice, nobody is trying to find. Megan gave him a light grip on the hand. Emma leaned and said, maybe that's a good thing. Enthusiastically moving forward. Can we keep him, Dad? He needs us, please. Robert glanced at. Megan looks for reluctance in her expression, but he only noticed the same silence, resolution that he sensed growing inside himself. Chesty grinned as he faced Emma. Gently, yes, child. I believe he's all ready. Emma threw her arms up and squealed. Home. Robert laughed and embraced him around the neck. Megan stood and crossed the street in her tight. The space where Shadow was curled up. The living room continues to observe. She looked at everything warily and knelt. She reached down carefully and held out her hand. She said, welcome home, Shadow, with warmth. Shadow looked at her for a while. Then, very gradually, it made me cry. He scampered forward and met Megan's eyes. Robert buried his nose in her hand, and Emma sat down gently with him on. They didn't crowd him on the adjacent floor. They simply sat there and gave him the decision, and, for the first time since so fearful, jump into their truck. Shadow selected them. His figure remained slender, and, fragile, loosened up a little. His breathing slowed down, and they're in that tiny dwelling, room full of people who witnessed him, who gave a damn about Shadow. At last, let rest by oneself. He was at home and would never be alone again. Nothing has changed in life. Adu remained bashful throughout the night, still flinching at abrupt moves, apprehensive about loud sounds. But each day, Emma gradually assisted him, returned to believe her. She made it her mission every afternoon after school. Emma used to sit with her legs crossed on a book on the floor of the living room next to him. She softly read aloud from her lap, and persistently sharing with him tales of brave families, explorers, and enchanted places, who consistently returned to one another. The words were not understood by the other Shadow, of sure, but he recognized the generosity. The warmth in her voice made sense to him. Emma occasionally drew pictures, vibrant, multicolored crayon illustrations of their small family, including her parents and now Shadow. Grinning beneath a bright sun, she would attach them to the fridge with tape and show Shadow with pride, as though to convey that you're now a part of us. Initially, only Shadow observed from afar, head low, tail still tucked, but he approached very cautiously. Emma was reading a storybook one day. With his head resting on her knee, Shadow and exhaled deeply with satisfaction. It was Robert's initial observation of Emma crying, of unadulterated happiness. As the weeks went by, Shadow became more courageous. Emma and Robert began bringing him for quick strolls around the block at his own pace and with patience. Shadow would initially be hesitant, but with Emma's kind prodding, he would take one more step each time, his nose fluttering as he picked up fresh fragrances and noises. There were sometimes days of setbacks, when he was startled by a loud truck, days when there was a loud shout beneath the couch, would make him tremble once more. But in their home, love was consistent and unwavering, and Shadow gradually came to believe in it. Emma Roberts, on a bright Saturday morning, Shadow and Megan took seats together in the Emma threw a softball across the backyard. The grass, Shadow briefly just saw it roll, and then everyone's incredulous. He rushed after it awkwardly, and Robert laughed, unsure but delighted. Megan. Emma grinned as she clapped her hands. It appeared to brighten the entire yard. A little more trust developed each day. Even so, the wounds from his past still remained in the security of their small, within the cozy confines of Shadow, a 9-year-old girl, started to have faith in an improved future as the days became shorter and Emma's fall color deepened, and Shadow settled into a joyful cadence. After school, each afternoon, they would stroll around the peaceful Willow Creek, waving to neighbors while exploring the streets. Crunchy leaves strewn all over the sidewalk. Shadow's self-assurance increased. Every time he goes out, his steps get stronger. Megan's tail wasn't tucked in as securely, and Robert would frequently observe from a porch, grinning at his progress. It was when taking one of these strolls on Saturday morning, everything was different. Emma loosely grasped Shadow's rope in her hand while strolling along Maple Street, savoring the brilliant brightness and the quiet hum of the neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson, up ahead, lovely old lady who owned 2 homes. Someone was attempting to cross the street across. She gently balances herself on her cane. Emma reduced her speed after realizing that. Then Shadow's focus had become more acute. A automobile turned from around the bend as well. Quick tires that screech a little as it. Emma hurried to the crossroads. Her throat tightened in a gulp as she froze. Shadow shifted quickly, and he released the rope from Emma's slack hold and ran, aggressively barking forward as a warning that echoed over the road. The vehicles, the driver's brakes shrieked as they attempted to stop. Shadow arrived at Mrs. Patterson's house just in time, gently urging her to leave. The tires shrieked along the car's course with his body. The car skidded to a stop within inches. For a minute from where they were standing, everything paused, and then Mrs. Patterson knelt, trembling but unhurt, cautiously next to Shadow. Tears welled up in her eyes. "You saved me," she said as she embraced him. Emma ran to them with her heart. She whispered. She put her arms around him, beating. Shadow's voice was husky with, "Feeling's good, buddy. Shadow, you're incredible." People poured out of their homes. Some clapped as they hurried toward the scene. Others applauded, and word swiftly spread. The once frightened stray Shadow had preserved a Willow Creek life from that day on. Shadow was more than just Emma's canine companion. It was the evidence and the local hero that even the most damaged hearts are capable of. After that day, you were the bravest. For Shadow, everything changed after hearing about his valiant deed. Swiftly spread among his neighbors, arrived with toys and food for the kids, created vibrant drawings of him. Shadow is a superhero wearing a cape. Formerly peaceful strolls around the community turned into happy parades that everyone desired to greet the canine that was formerly too terrified to even raise his head. Mrs. Forever appreciative, Patterson stitched Emma a bright red scarf just for him, placed it around his neck with pride each, like a badge in the morning before their walks of honor. Shadow who had previously concealed. His head was now slightly grasped by the world. His tail became lighter as he walked higher. Megan and Robert frequently wagged freely. Their hearts watched him from the porch. Complete Shadow wasn't merely a component of their family no longer. He was Willow's property. Creek at the yearly autumn celebration, Shadow, being the honored guest, Emma escorted him. With pride, the mayor in the crowd even gave him a miniature medal, paw print shaped, for bravery. According to the mayor, pinning it to Shadow's. Emma wore a bright red scarf and smiled as Shadow sat at her side, boldly soaking up the laughter and applause that surrounded the cool fall air, but Shadow doesn't. That was just as important as the silence. Items a young girl's gentle voice, reading him before bed. Tales the wafting aroma of pancakes, the warm spot on the kitchen surface. He might snuggle up on a rug in the living room and understand that Shadow had located him safely. He was unaware of what he had been, looking for a family, a house, or a location where he wasn't damaged or not forgotten, but cherished and honored. Every hero has a cape, and some have four paws with a large heart and a wagging tail, enough to alter the course of history.